Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to take a look at a TikTok by Olly Dobson, someone that gives a lot of man's advice regarding several different topics, and one of his clips caught my attention. Never seen this person before, never really look at TikTok either. This is actually my first TikTok video per se, just not my cup of tea, I guess. And in that regard, I'm curious as to what's covered on this platform. People may have heard of him, people may recognize his face, but I figured we'd take a look, see what it's about. Without further ado, let's get this. Why Gen Z men reject feminism.
Why are Gen Z men saying fuck off to feminism? Yesterday, BBC News shared an article that showed the widening gap between Gen Z men and Gen Z women, with a particular trend showing that Gen Z women are becoming more progressive and Gen Z men are becoming more conservative. Now, this is nothing new. It was shown that this was happening in America before, and it's happening across the West. And for me, it's incredibly fucking obvious why this is happening. Because feminism and the left in the present day do absolutely nothing to support men. They do the opposite. They demonize, they stigmatize, and they ignore their problems.
I think one of the entry points to becoming a male feminist, or a feminism as it views men, is that you have to submit to the idea. I don't think any just movement should have anyone submit to the idea. And in order to be a male feminist or to support feminism in its current monstrous state, I'm not talking about the 1930s. This isn't the same movement. For anyone that wants to argue that, feel free. And I'll go ahead and point you towards several articles that display the monstrosity that is now feminism and is not the equality that was sought out in the 1930s. That's not what's happening anymore. Now it's misandry. Now it's a matter of fact of bashing on men and ridiculing men. And now it's female superiority, because in the United States, there's no equality to be gained anymore. You got it already. There's nothing outside of that. And so any predisposition of misery or sadness because you don't like where you are, that's not a man's fault, because we haven't existed in a patriarchy for almost 50 years now. I suggest that you fully understand what a patriarchy is, because we have not been in a patriarchy for a long time now. And that means that everything is ran by men. It's not that it's majority is ran. No, it's everything is ran by men. And that is not the case in the United States. We have seen a lot of women make groundbreaking discoveries in the realms of science, in the realms of education, and in the realms of business and administration. We have a lot of women leading things, and that has increased over the past 50 years. We're not in a patriarchy. Sorry. You're going to have to use a different argument, because you yourself are just regurgitating what's being told to you. So that way you can justify a form of oppression and a form of inferiority because you haven't moved or done anything. And because that's harder to face, let's go pick a hill to die on, because that feels better.
Why would young men be drawn to an ideology that on the surface at least comes across like it hates men for being men?
Yep.
And that is not what feminism is meant to be about. In
Nope.
theory, according to some definitions, it is meant to be about gender equality.
Correct.
But all you need to do is chat to the average feminist, or see the average feminist influencer on social media, point out some of the inequalities that men face, such as in the education system, such as in mental health care, and such as how the economy is changing today with the decline of traditional jobs. Do they care? No, absolutely not. But what will they do? They will blame men for it. They will say it is the fault of men themselves. It's the patriarchy. Men have built this system.
And this isn't every feminist. I don't think every feminist is based on misandry. I think that some want to see women do better. The subjective view of that, though, is that who defines better, and how can we operationally define better? Because if we operationally define better in the realm of women, that means that we should push them towards fulfillment and fulfilling potential, which is what? Families. Women find fulfillment more likely than not in families. That's not to say every woman, and I'm sure there's anecdotal evidence, but the thing is that's anecdotal. There's also there's much more evidence that states that women establishing homes and being the environment of those homes and the atmosphere of those homes is much more meaningful than to pursue degrees or to enact the livelihood of those degrees, because a lot of women coming forward after pursuing their master's, their PhD, and being in the realm of medicine, law, whatever, they are now coming out of the woodwork saying they're alone, they're depressed, they're sad, they have no meaning in their life. Sure, achieving the degree was one thing, but that is not sustainable. The thing that has the most return is your own children. Children offer the most return and consistent return in regards to what it means to be present and valuable in your own life. And that's why women often find more fulfillment in raising families. And men find fulfillment in that too. It's not just a women thing. Oh, women have to stay in the home. That's not what I'm saying. There's a lot of little jabs like that. Just because you don't understand, that doesn't mean that you can regurgitate something that's an insult. That's not what's being done here. What's being talked about here is the livelihood of women. And if you don't concern yourself with the livelihood of women, I suggest you come with a better argument.
Therefore, it's their fault. But when it comes to women's inequality, it's a systemic problem, which is weird, because when it's men's issues, it's them that's the problem. It comes from inside. But
Correct.
For women, everything else is outside. Again, it's men's fault. And the reason they do this most of the time is because they're fucking ignoramuses. They haven't done their research. They haven't looked at the data. They haven't seen that inequality exists for both men and women and that it's desirable to address both of them. And they also haven't done the own self-reflection to see that the stance they're taking of pointing the finger at men and blaming them rather than trying to address the problems is a reflection of their own ego and refusal to accept changing information. And the problem with this is it's created an enormous vacuum where you have a lack of male support on the left. So it's all come from the right, who are not much better either. It's just led the way for this very fixed traditional idea of masculinity, where if you don't conform to it, you're seen as a beta male or a soy boy. But the left are in complete denial about how they're aiding this side of the right, and they will say something like what I'm saying now, as a more neutral observational stance, is akin to that. They will say that anybody who dares to criticise feminist ideology or woke ideology must be a Tate-supporting right-winger. And people can see through that bullshit. They're sick of it. And guess who most of the people are that are sick of this? The young men, the ones who are being told by those people that they're the bad ones. So what does feminism need to do? Start fucking listening to the problems that men are facing and stop pretending that they don't exist, because inequality can exist for both sexes. Check out leading male inequality experts like Richard Reeves. Check out the American Institute for Boys and Men. Check out the all-party political group for boys and men. Start looking into the crisis of masculinity. You can read a fantastic article by a feminist author called Christine Ember in the New York Times discussing the problems that men are facing. Because
I'd be very mindful about your approach to Christine Ember, because her approach to masculinity is it's not how do we apply masculinity on the left. It's how do we have an acceptable form of masculinity on the left. And I don't think we need to worry about acceptable or unacceptable. I think that we need to pursue the best versions of ourselves and not be too concerned about the limiters on things. It's like, yeah, you can be a man, but you have to be a man in this way and this way only. It's just like, you still don't get it. You're still on the side of female superiority. And because you're on that side, you will always have a reluctant perspective regarding the complete and utter potential of what men can be. And because that skews your view, you will never have a clear line of sight. You need to clear your view out. You need to be more empathic. You need to understand that uplifting is uplifting in its entirety and not uplifting to a certain limit that you find or deem acceptable. That's not how potential works. If people are told the sky's the limit, then the fucking sky's the limit. You don't tell them like, oh yeah, the sky's the limit, but you can only go this fucking far before we have to stop you because now you're too much. It's just like, no, go all the way, all the way. And there's no rules to this. You just go, you rise. And that is so much more empowering than being told, yeah, you can be something, but don't be too much. don't be too much this is where the demasculinization really comes into play, because it's don't be too aggressive, don't be too offensive, don't be too competitive, don't be too ambitious, it's just like, no, be those things and find fulfillment in the process, so that way you can narrate and direct yourself in a path that does give purpose, so that way you don't end up being this miserable creature because you listen to the wrong people coming up. I think that's what often happens with women, is that they get told the wrong narrative. It's not necessarily the wrong narrative. It's just that they get told a narrative that doesn't lead to an objective truth. It doesn't lead to objective fulfillment. And because it doesn't lead to that, it sounds good in the process on paper until we're there, and then we're alone. And then we feel nothing. And that's not good.
When more feminists start taking male inequality seriously too, because it is not beneficial to society as a whole, then we will have less of this divide. Men are not collectively bad as an entire gender, but I'll tell you who are collectively bad: people who believe that they are. And what will those people often identify themselves as? The word begins with an F.
So that was Olly Dobson with his pitch on why Gen Z men reject feminism. I think that there's a lot of points hit on the head, And like I said at the start, I think that when a movement or a system requires submission of men in order for entry, it's like naturally, that doesn't sound like something I want to be, or that doesn't sound like something I want to be involved in. Because in order to accept myself in this movement, I have to be deemed as less. I'm good. I will consider myself more, or I would flock to an organization or a movement that will help me consider myself more. Because what's happening right now is that men are seeking guidance on how to be and what to be. What led to this outcome is obviously the impressionable youth of fatherlessness, as well as childhood abuse and trauma. These are increasing, and they have been increasing over the past 20 years, let alone the 30 years before then in the 1970s, where it got catastrophically worse. But we are seeing a gradual increase to an alarming rate. And that question for young men is becoming more and more prominent, because fathers are existing less and less, or at least the quality of fathers. Sometimes there can be fathers. I said this before, but that doesn't mean that that can be effective, because now we're also seeing a reduced quality there too, because that question remained. You have men that are becoming fathers that don't know how to be men. And I think that that can be an issue in itself. Feminism, as the monster it is now, for anyone that believes that they're a good feminist because of misandry, that's not feminism. Gender equality is not gender superiority. I think that there's people out there that want to see women do better, and I can agree with those people. But when you sit there and you want superiority, we need to understand that when we deem ourselves superior, we're no longer helping. We're no longer good. We're no longer effective. And we also need to understand the biological components at play. Women have orientations and natural inclinations for women. Men have orientations and natural inclinations for women. People really want to get tied up in the idea of gender roles. Like the last millennia and thousands of years prior of evolution had nothing to do with it. It's like, no, it's just gender roles. It's just been a no. This has been a thing, because before electronics, before firearms, before weapons, it was a matter of strength, and males on average are always much stronger and able to survive whatever. And it's been this way, and it's this way with several different animal groups. It doesn't really matter if we're talking about humans anymore. But the biological predisposition needs to be understood, that this is just the way it is. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be some social construct. Back when we didn't know language and we couldn't have these forms of schema or constructs previously, we didn't talk about it. It was the way it was. And it was a pure understanding of even caveman times. But that's all I got to say about that. If you appreciated the content so far, consider subscribing. If you disliked the video, then dislike it. Hopefully you never see me again. Comment in the comment section down below as to why you think men are rejecting feminism, and why some women are also rejecting feminism. It's not just Gen Z men. I find it very interesting that we're seeing a little bit of a shift there, because I think that the veil is kind of dropping. I think that we're starting to see it for what it is because there isn't a whole lot of patriarchy. There isn't a whole lot of oppression. Now it's just an excuse, I think. And I think that there's a difference between wanting women to do better and then thinking women are superior. It's a nice thick line. And I think that your conduct and your ethic and the way that you perceive things can often dictate what side that you stand on. So thanks for watching, and I'll go ahead, see you next time.